This is Ticino. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to talk about Ticino. But if you're new here, I'm guessing that you're probably thinking, what the heck is that? And well, you're not alone, because Ticino is actually the least known of Switzerland's 26 cantons. But it should be said that this also makes it one of the most unique, because unlike all the other Swiss cantons, Ticino has a completely different language, culture and climate than the rest of the country. So much so that some people even call it Switzerland's secret gem. Or others will say that it's like visiting an entirely different country. So what makes Ticino so special? Well, you'll have to watch and find out. Ticino is located in the very south of Switzerland, bordering Italy to the north, the Swiss canton of Valais to the east, and the Italian region of Lombardy to the south and the west. The capital city is also called Ticino. It's right across from Milan, Italy, which is by far the closest big city. In fact, most of Ticino is part of the Milan urban area, so much so that people often commute between Ticino and Milan for work. This is why many consider Ticino to be more Italian than Swiss. And that's quite ironic considering that in every other Swiss canton, people might cross the border to France, Germany or Austria, but never to Italy. Now there is one thing that stands out when you look at a map of Switzerland, and that's the fact that Ticino doesn't really look like the other cantons because it's basically two. This is because the Swiss Confederation acquired these two halves at two different points in history. The southern half, which includes the capital, was obtained in 1798 when the Swiss invaded northern Italy during the Napoleonic Wars. Meanwhile, the northern half was only added in 1803 after Napoleon ordered the reorganization of northern Italy following his victory over the Austrians. Basically, they just took a piece of the Austrian Empire and gave it to Switzerland. So yeah, the two halves of Ticino were basically just given to Switzerland by force, and the locals weren't really happy about it. In fact, they didn't gain full autonomy until 1848. Ticino, used to be called the Republic of Ticino until they decided to drop that republic part back in 1847. Fast forward to today, and it's the tiniest and southernmost canton in all of Switzerland. Can you believe that? With just over 350,000 residents, it makes up only about 4% of the entire country's population. Yet, despite being small, it's pretty cool how it's divided into 8 distinct districts and boasts a whopping 147 municipalities. Each little area has its own unique charm and vibe, making Ticino a fascinating blend of cultures and landscapes. So, whether you're into stunning lakes, mountains, or charming towns, Ticino has something special for everyone. Because Ticino is the most southern canton of Switzerland, it has a completely different climate than the rest of the country. Unlike the rest of Switzerland, which is mostly known for its snowy mountains and cold weather, Ticino is known for its warm summers and Mediterranean climate. In fact, it's the warmest canton of Switzerland, and it receives almost double the amount of sunshine as the other cantons. So if you want to live somewhere in Switzerland with warm weather, good food and wine, then Ticino is your best bet. And don't forget the stunning views of the Alps. One thing to keep in mind about Ticino's warm climate is that, unfortunately, it means you can't really dive into winter sports like skiing or snowboarding. Sure, there's some snow in the higher elevations, but it tends to vanish pretty quickly. That's probably why you won't see a ton of tourists flocking here during the winter months. It's just not a winter wonderland vibe, Plus, most of the land in Ticino isn't exactly farm-friendly. With all those stunning mountains around, it makes it tough to grow crops. So, the region ends up importing a lot of its food. When you think about it, staples like bread and milk are coming from other places, which is kind of wild. It's interesting how the landscape shapes not just the activities but also the local economy, right? The official language of Ticino is Italian, and the vast majority of the population speak it as their native language. However, there's also a significant German-speaking minority. They're mainly concentrated in the northern part of the canton. As a result, the German spoken here is actually a mix of German and Italian. They also speak a local dialect called Ticinese, which is based on the Milanese dialect. However, they also throw in a lot of words from German, French and Latin. Even though Latin isn't really spoken here anymore, it's still used in place names. For example, you have Monte Neri, Monte Carrasso and Mogegno. Switzerland is known for being very expensive, but compared to the other cantons, Ticino is actually one of the cheapest places to live. In terms of purchasing power, it ranks last among the Swiss cantons, coming in 23rd. This is likely due to its proximity to Italy, since it imports many goods from there. Also, because Ticino is so close to Milan, it's easier to find cheaper alternatives there. And the fact that many people commute to Milan for work helps keep prices low. All of this makes Ticino an attractive destination for retirees and wealthy Italians looking for a second home. Although Ticino is part of Switzerland, it is often excluded from nationwide votes. The reason for this is that because of its closeness to Italy, it could easily become separated from the rest of the country. And if that happened, it would make no sense to include them in a national vote. In fact, it sometimes seems like Ticino is closer to Italy than to the rest of Switzerland. For example, Ticino doesn't celebrate Swiss holidays like August and December. Instead, they celebrate Italian ones like Liberazione Day and the Festa della Repubblica. On top of that, the Swiss Federal Railways stop at the border with Italy. The trains from Ticino to the rest of Switzerland are operated by the Italian rail company Trenitalia. Another interesting fact is that Ticino uses the Swiss franc and the euro. Most businesses prefer to use the euro, but recently the Swiss franc has become more widely accepted. The unemployment rate in Ticino is always lower than the national average, usually hovering around 4 or 5%. This is because of the strong connection between Ticino and the Italian economy, which has historically been stronger than the Swiss economy. But recently, Ticino's unemployment rate has spiked to around 8%. This is mostly due to the pandemic, which hit the Italian economy hard. Speaking of the economy, Ticino is known for having the highest GDP per capita of all the Swiss cantons. This is largely thanks to its financial sector. The main industries in Ticino are finance, tourism and precision instruments. When it comes to agriculture, Ticino produces a lot of fruit, vegetables and wine. Cattle breeding is also very important. And when it comes to crafts and manufacturing, you have things like textiles, shoes and furniture. Ticino is pretty cool when it comes to education, boasting for universities. 2 of them are right in the capital, while the other two call Bellinzona and Locarno home. Fun fact, the University of Lugano was actually started by the Italian Catholic university system, which is kind of unique, right? Now, considering that Ticino has only about 350,000 residents, it's the canton with the fewest students per capita. That means each student really stands out, and it creates a tight-knit community where everyone knows each other. You can really feel that personal touch in the classrooms and campus life. Now let's take a look at some of the major cities in Ticino. First, we have the capital city, which also bears the same name as the canton. With around 190,000 inhabitants, it's by far the largest city in Ticino and the 7th largest in Switzerland. The city is situated on the shores of Lake Lugano and is known for its palm trees, subtropical plants and mild climate. Lugano is a popular destination for Italians looking for a cheap getaway. Just like the rest of the canton, the city has a very diverse population with almost equal amounts of native Italians, Germans and Swiss. Historically, Lugano was pretty poor. It wasn't until the 19th century when Switzerland began developing railways that Lugano became connected to the rest of Switzerland and started growing. Today, the service sector plays a central role in the city's economy, along with banking, commerce and tourism. There are also some smaller industrial areas near the city center where you have things like textiles, machinery and chemicals. Next, we have Bellinzona, the second largest city in Ticino with around 18,000 inhabitants. Bellinzona is situated on the river Riviera and is known for its 3 castles, which date back to the 13th century. These castles served as part of a defense system designed to protect the strategically important road between Milan and the Swiss Alps. In the Middle Ages, Bellinzona was an important trading center and it remained so throughout the 18th century. After the Swiss Confederation took control of the area, Bellinzona became a cantonal capital and its economy diversified into things like industry and services. And finally, let's take a look at Locarno, the third largest city in Ticino with around 16,000 inhabitants. Locarno is situated on the shores of Lake Maggiore and is known for its beautiful lakeside promenade and palm trees. The city has a very diverse population with almost equal amounts of native Italians, Germans and Swiss. Located in the southernmost part of Ticino, Locarno was historically very isolated from the rest of the canton and the rest of Switzerland. In the Middle Ages, it was ruled by the Duchy of Milan, and it wasn't until the late 18th century when it became part of the Swiss Confederation. During the 19th century, Locarno grew thanks to the development of the railway, and it quickly turned into a tourist hotspot. To this day, Locarno remains one of the favorite destinations for Swiss and Italians alike. Well, that wraps up the video about Ticino. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.